Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Caleb Hemphill. I am the chair of the Falmouth Town Council, and we welcome you to Lunt Auditorium for our growth and residential density workshop. Thank you for coming out on this cold night. We are here tonight at the request of the Town Council. Last April, the Council adopted a resolution where it agreed to conduct a public process to hear residents' concerns relative to high-density residential zoning, including conducting a public forum, this event, and to conduct a review of the current ordinance language that addresses it. The council requested that the Long Range Planning Advisory Committee, also known as LPAC, conduct this process and provide the council with its recommendations. Tonight is the first step in this process. Where is this forum coming from? For that, we go back a few years. In early 2014, the council adopted a new comprehensive plan, referred familiarly as the comp plan. The main idea of the plan is that Falmouth has two growth areas and a rural area, and a large rural area at that. The growth areas have a commercial mixed-use center at Route 100 and Route 1. These centers are surrounded by walkable neighborhoods. The goal of the comp plan is that over the next 10 or so years, a significant majority of the new growth will be in the growth areas, and that the character of the rural area be preserved. Upon adoption of the plan, the comp plan, the two town committees worked on what we call year one implementation measures. LPAC focused on the growth area, and the Community Development Committee, known as CDC, focused on the rural area. The council adopted the concepts that these two committees came up with and charged the CDC with coming up with actual zoning amendments. These amendments were ultimately adopted by the council in 2016, in July 2016. The amendments made it easier for accessory units, also known as mother-in-law apartments, or accessory dwelling units, to be built adjusting zoning boundaries and modified densities, setbacks, and lot sizes in certain districts. This made it easier to build infill single-family units in keeping with the existing densities in neighborhoods, and to build two-family and make it easier to build two-family and multifamily developments, which before were very difficult to build. When some developments were proposed and built that people felt were not in keeping with the neighborhood, concern was expressed. This concern, the council took these concerns very seriously, and in November 2017 approved a moratorium, most of you remember that, retroactively halting the building of two-family and multifamily developments in certain districts while it studied the issue. In March of 2018, this year, the council tweaked the zoning ordinance by equalizing densities between single-family, two-family, and multifamily developments. There was a citizen petition proposed for the June 2018 ballot. The council determined for legal reasons not to send the petition to the voters and committed to the public process that I mentioned earlier that we are beginning this evening. With this process, the council hopes to evaluate the July 2016 zoning amendments in more detail to make sure they accomplish what the council intended with the 2013 comprehensive plan. The first step is an opportunity to inventory all concerns that you have about residential growth and density. LPAC will take the next steps will be that LPAC will take your feedback and will examine actual and proposed developments since 2016, review the existing zoning requirements, and possibly visit some project sites in Falmouth. The council hopes that LPAC will deliver its recommendations sometime in early 2019, and that we can schedule, and at that time we will schedule a second follow-up public forum to follow up and present that information and get additional feedback. At this point, I will hand the microphone over to Craig Freshley, who will lead us through this evening's event. Craig's an excellent facilitator. We've worked with him often, who has no stake in the outcome of this process, and other than to help us arrive at the best possible outcome for Falmouth. LPAC members and counselors are here to listen to you and learn as much as possible. Again, thank you for coming out tonight. Craig.
Well, can we clap for you first?
No, you don't need to do that. But thank you.
All right, thanks, Caleb. I got my own microphone. Thank you. My name is Craig Freshley. Thanks for inviting me to work with you tonight. I work with a lot of municipalities, a lot of nonprofit boards of directors, government agencies, some corporations. My company's called Good Group Decisions. I'm based in Brunswick. I've been doing this for 15 years, and I love meetings like this, where we get away from our computer screens and we get to talk face to face. We get to share directly with our town officials what our opinions are. So I'm pretty thrilled to be here. I'm going to explain to you the agenda a little bit. I'm going to explain some ground rules, and then we're going to get on with it. We want to hear from you. Where did I put that clicker? Right over here. How's this going to work? Our agenda tonight, after we do this little opening rigmarole and we explain how it's going to work, is basically in two parts. First of all, we want to hear what you have to say in brief. And I'll explain in more detail, but basically the way we're going to do that is I'm going to ask you a question. What's on your mind about growth density in Falmouth? And I'm going to ask you to write very brief answers to those questions, headlines, on these pieces of paper. I've passed them out. I've got markers. And for all of those folks sitting in chairs, I've got a big bag of clipboards here. Actually, I'm going to take these back there right now, and you can start handing them out, because I want you to be able to participate also. So everybody in a chair, get yourself a clipboard so you can write, and might as well get this going too. We'll send out the paper and the markers coming around for all the people at the back. When we get to that point in the agenda, I'm going to ask you for your ideas. And then we're going to stick them up here on this wall. The paper sticks to it. I don't know how the ideas are going to come up. This is a blank slate, if you will. We're going to organize them as we go. And then we're going to see what things on your mind have the most energy. What is most on your mind? And depending on what comes up on this wall and what seems to be most popular, then we're going to do part two, where we go back topic by topic. This way, we're going to talk about the things that you as a group most want to talk about. I don't know what they're going to be, but whatever they are, we'll go back through, and then I'm going to ask some deeper questions. Why is that important to you? What do you mean by that? Why is it that you believe that? Etc. We'll get through as much as we can. Before we adjourn, we'll do some quick themes as best I can. We'll do some thanks. We're going to be out of here by 9 o'clock at the latest. Some things that I'm asking you to keep in mind while we have our meeting tonight. I'm calling them ground rules. First of all, as Caleb said, your town council chair, this is the first step in this process. And this step is all about listening. We want to hear from each other and not yet make conclusions. I'm asking you to reserve judgment this evening. LPAC members and the city councilors, town councilors, forgive me, town councilors are here listening. So this is the first step in the process where you have the chance to say what's on your mind. We want to hear from everybody, and that's why we're doing this technique of everybody gets to write a couple pieces of paper and put them on the wall. And if you don't get a chance to make your comment tonight, you can email Teo after this evening, and the last slide I'm going to show this evening is going to have his email address if you don't have it already. This is not your only opportunity to make comments. While we're here in the room, I'm asking that you let me manage the discussion and let me call on people. I'm going to try and make it so as many different voices can be heard tonight as possible. I'm even going to try to have a little rule that says everybody gets a chance to go once before anybody goes twice. So if I see, a couple hands go up at the same time, and one of those people has spoke before and one hasn't, I'm going to call on the one who hasn't, because I'm trying to make room for everybody to be heard tonight. The last thing I want to say here is that you can count on me to be your neutral facilitator. I haven't been given any special instructions about the outcome of tonight's meeting. I don't know what the outcome's going to be. You know what? As probably you're going to figure out in this meeting, I don't even know Falmouth that well. I don't know your issues like you know them. My goal is to be neutral, make sure that as many people as possible get a voice, and that the LPAC members and the City Council have an opportunity to hear what's on your mind. In addition to running the meeting tonight, I'm also going to be preparing a report of themes. Any ideas that go up on the wall here tonight, I'm going to take a picture of them and write them up, and I will be doing my best to capture themes, patterns, not conclusions, but themes, and I'll be preparing that in a report. You ready to try this? Yes, sir. Yeah, we only have a couple hours, so we're going to jump in here pretty quick. We got a question? Wait for the mic, if you don't mind. Tell us who you are and what's your question.
John Winslow, and I would think it might be more beneficial rather than ideas in brief should be concerns in brief. I think that's the major reason why most people are here, is that they have serious concerns, not so much of ideas. The ideas have already been presented, and that's what has been the catalyst here.
Okay, that'll be just fine. If you want to bring concerns instead of ideas, you should raise your concerns. I got no problem with that. I don't think anybody does. Do you want to say something? No?
Want to help you with the second mic?
Oh, no, I want to keep both mics. Thank you. This is part of how I do this, is I'm going to keep track of the mics. I appreciate your help, but I'm going to be good with this. Okay, so first, we're not going to need any mics at all, because I'm going to ask you to think about this question. What's on your mind regarding residential development in Falmouth? Some instructions. Each person write 1 to 3 things. Some of you in this room could say 10 things about residential development in Falmouth. I'm asking you to figure out your top 3. We got a lot of people in the room tonight. We can't hear 10 things from every person. What are your top 3? Write 1 thing per paper. Don't start writing yet, okay? Listen to all these instructions first. 1 thing per paper. Write clearly and legibly. Use the colored paper and the markers provided. Now, if you haven't figured this out, there's a relationship between the size of the marker and the size of the paper. You're not going to be able to write too much, and that's on purpose. The fewer words, the better. Think of a headline. I'm asking you to, what is it that you want LPAC members and the town council to hear in a headline, a topic heading, a paraphrase? Write clearly and legibly. I think we had that one already. And the reason is because we won't be able to read the comments once they're up on the wall, the headlines. If you can condense your thing, what's on your mind, to like 5 words or 7 words, and fit them on that piece of paper clearly and legibly, that would be so helpful, because we will all be able to see them, and we'll be able to quickly and easily organize them. When done, check out this part. Bring your papers to the front. This is going to get a little messy here. That's okay. We can live with messy. It's a quick, efficient way to get the ideas. I am going to be standing up here, putting them on the wall. We're going to organize them as they come as best we can. Teo's going to help me. Maybe Melissa will come up and help me. Maybe Nathan will come up and help me. And very quickly and organically, we are going to see what comes and organize them on the wall. Does anybody have any questions about what I'm asking you to do? We're going to take like 3, maybe 5 minutes of quiet time, probably just like 3 minutes of quiet time, and let you write your ideas. Any questions? Some folks are already writing. Let's try it. When you've got your 1 to 3 ideas written, bring them on up. Okay, thanks a lot for your patience, everybody. This is pretty interesting. I'm going to read a lot of these because I know that you can't see them, but visually we've got a pretty good picture here. I'm going to have to say, first of all, let me read the headlines, okay? And these are not perfect. You know, you can see that we whip this up pretty darn quick, and if somebody has different suggestions, I'd like to hear them. But these concerns over here are about the process, and I'll read some of those. These are specifically about Falmouth Center. This headline says density, okay? A lot of these comments are about that Falmouth is becoming too dense. In this area, concerns about taxes and property values, concerns about impact to the schools, impact on affordable housing, traffic concerns. Over here, it gets a little bit messy. Some of these are about sidewalks and the impact on Falmouth as a pedestrian-friendly community. Others of these don't mention pedestrian in particular, but talk about neighborhood character. Over here, we have concerns about rural and open space and some environmental issues. Again, quick and dirty, but those are the main headlines. Let's jump into the one that, in my opinion, has the most energy in this room, which is density, okay? I'm going to read some of these, and we are already into phase 2 of our agenda where we're going to go deeper on some of these issues. We're going to start with density. Maybe after that, we'll see where it leads, but I think that okay, I think there's the 4 top ones that you want to talk about this evening are density, neighborhood character, property taxes and property values, and I'm getting some prompts up here for schools. We'll see what it looks like, but let's start with that, okay? Density. I'm just going to read some of these. If I don't understand something, I might ask. We're going to get into a conversation. Remember the ground rules? I'm asking you to raise a hand. I'll bring the mic to you. We want to hear as much as we can, starting with this topic. This says, how many is too many? Is there infrastructure to support dense development? How much growth can our infrastructure support? Neighborhoods with functioning through roads are overburdened by development and cul-de-sacs and infill. The cost of infrastructure on schools, who bears the burden of traffic? So schools and traffic. East Falmouth is too dense. Fear of becoming too congested. Population growth versus school capacity. 2003 changes incentivized unnatural accelerated residential growth rather than managing growth that would naturally occur. Whoever wrote this one gets a round of applause. This is very clear words on a piece of paper. Well, if I wasn't holding a mic, I would clap for you. Thank you for that one. Build denser housing along Route 1. What is the justification for the town increasing density at all? Zoning lot sizes are too small. Falmouth Woods Association paid $20,000 for a lawyer. Everything my husband and I have worked hard for, taken away. Lot size minimums are too small. Route 1 and other Washington or Forest Ave or Brighton Avenue, concern about that. Infrastructure, school, roads, wastewater. You are concerned about increased density and the impact it's going to have on your infrastructure. Can the infrastructure support it? I'm going to read a couple more of these too, and then I'm going to ask a couple questions. Excessive greed. High-density housing shouldn't have a place in Falmouth. Where should high density occur? Density relative to existing character, in favor of development to scale of current zoning. Hope we fix the IRA district, wider lots. Approval for smaller project. Too much growth too quickly. Did I read this one? Excessive greed. Too many homes developed on small lots. Restrict home permits per year to a reasonable number. Developments are too dense. New levels of density will greatly impact service. Thoughtful, tasteful, sustainable, renewable growth. Neighbors need breathing room. We have growth and density. We don't need more. Consider no new homes. Stop sprawl. You had a lot to say on this topic of density. I'd like to start with this question right in the middle. What is the justification for increasing density at all? Now, we could ask one of our town officials this question, but I'd like to ask one of you from the public. Could somebody offer a justification for increasing density? Before we get into all the concerns with it, why are we even talking about increasing density? Raise a hand.
Political correctness, in my opinion.
Political correctness. Tell me a little more. Bob, right? Okay. What's politically correct about density?
I believe that they're trying to make Falmouth something that it isn't. People have worked hard, earned money to be able to move into Falmouth and live in this community, send their children to this school system, which is probably one of the top ones in there. My daughter graduated from it, got into a top college, and I think anybody would want to move into Falmouth that has young children and put their kids into the school system. So I think I'd like the question of why did they do this back 3 or 4 years ago? I don't think that we ever got a good answer from the town on why they changed the zoning.
Okay, thanks for starting us off. I really appreciate that. You want to clap for him? That sounds great. Rather than ask a question that goes back in history, why did somebody do this particular thing? I would love to hear more general arguments in favor of density. Maybe not this thing in particular, but why is there a case to be made for increased density? We're going to move off this pretty quick, but I want to hear this side of it just a little more because there's a lot to be said on the other side. Yes, sir. Tell us your name and what do you think?
Tony DePietro. I'm not crazy about such a large amount of density, but we do need some smaller lots that are affordable. When you look in the Falmouth area and your lots are starting out at 200,000 and up,
Okay.
that's not affordable. I mean, when I mean affordable, we're going to have younger people move into this town too. It can't be just all of us that's been here for 35 years like myself. We need new families, and they can't afford to come in at 200,000 and then start building. So I just sold a lot for 100,000, and I thought that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
that's what they're going for.
That's exactly the kind of answer I was looking for. Thank you. Increased density could make lots and houses more affordable. Did you want to speak up to this?
Yes. I would support density where people can actually walk to their daily needs, or like shopping center, walk to a barber shop, coffee shop, and there's only really one area in Falmouth that you can actually do that, and it is along the Route 1 area. But outside of that, all you're going to look and do is increase the carbon footprint of the town, which the town has made a commitment to reduce over the years from the Green Ribbon Commission. And by creating these density areas, you're just putting more cars on the road, that's making more trips per day, and you're doing exactly the opposite of what you're intended to do.
Okay. So density is good in cases where it's going to help us reduce our carbon footprint, and that generally means increase it in areas where we can already walk to. Let's hear one more comment on this, and then I'm going to ask for some of your concerns about density and what's bad about it.
Hi, I'm Roy Coby, and I live on the flats by Martins Point. If you take a population-based growth model rather than a land-based, and you develop more density, you can concentrate your population and preserve open space.
Preserve open space.
But you have to protect the open space then.
Okay, so we've heard another reason for density, that it could have the effect of protecting open space if the open space is also protected. I want to hear any kind of comment on density. If somebody wrote one of these pieces of paper and you would like to say more about that, say your concerns about density in Falmouth, I want to hear it. Anybody?
I'd like to point out that people who live in dense housing, meaning apartments, multifamily housing, even high-rise apartments, are not people who like rural character. They're different that way. And so to the extent you encourage, incentivize, you don't really need to incentivize anything. But you're choosing, at least in the 2013 changes, the changes that come since 2013, have actually deliberately incentivized something that previously had been disincentivized. There wasn't any multi-family housing even. It was kept infeasible, even if it wasn't prohibited. It was kept to be not an economically feasible kind of property to build. What happened in the beginning in 2013 with a comprehensive plan was the actual and rather abrupt and extreme incentivization of dense settlement, including multifamily housing, which not only was just being permitted, but is being highly incentivized, so the developers are attracted to it. And that will mean two things. You'll get people who like to live in dense housing, which are different than people who like to live the way most of Falmouth is, which is the rural character that you keep talking about. You drive down Falmouth Road, look at what you see on both sides of the road all the way down. That's what rural character looks like. Every house is different. It was built at a different time to the owner's choosing. He keeps it the way he wants to. He doesn't have to belong to an association and agree with a bunch of neighbors and go through a political process to make regulations. That style of living is different, and the people who like that style are different than people who live in densely populated buildings. So I would point that out. And even if you think that you're saving land, you are impacting the culture. You shouldn't consider saving land as being more important than preserving the culture of the people who are here. And after all, the people who live here are the constituents. All these changes should be on their behalf, not on behalf of people who don't live here. What are you doing that for?
Okay, all right. Someone else want to speak up? What's on your mind regarding density in Falmouth? What are your concerns?
My name's Keith Noyes, and this is Falmouth's 300th birthday this year. My concern is 300 years ago, there weren't very many people here. 200 years ago, Falmouth started to get going. 100 years ago, it started, there was a Falmouth started, it was almost there. It was starting to get going. Over the last 50 years, what we've done to this town is beyond what, we've built the town. It's built. 50 more years at this pace, hey, people leave Connecticut, New York, Boston to get away from that to come here. That's exactly what we're building. And that I don't want to see. I've lived here almost my whole life. I'm 62, been here over 50 of them. I love this town. It's a great, beautiful place to live, and I hate to see it ruined because of density and people. We just don't have the infrastructure to support it.
Okay. You don't want to see Falmouth become like other towns in Connecticut and New York, which would substantially change the character. Thanks, Mike. You want to speak up?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to echo your comments as well. Falmouth has sort of non-neighborhood living as well as neighborhood living. And so my concern and what I'm really opposed to is I'm not opposed to capitalism. I'm not opposed to people selling properties to benefit from it. But I am really opposed to real estate people and developers jamming properties into small lots that, in my judgment, benefit three people: real estate agents and builders. They benefit real estate agents and builders, and people who are actually selling the property, typically to leave town. So
And who's the third? You said benefits.
I think the three are real estate agents, builders, and people actually selling the property.
Okay, the seller.
Yeah,
Let me
so the
ask you this.
idea of just building disproportionately on a small lot
Right.
is really what is bothersome to me
Okay.
in an already existing relatively high density
Right.
neighborhood.
I'd like to
Does
have
that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. But I'm going to take this opportunity to have a little conversation with you,
That's
or
fine.
maybe somebody else who wants to take me up on this. Because we heard earlier that these small lots provide affordability. Is that, what do you have to say about that? Does anybody buy the argument that, yes, it benefits the developer, the seller, and the real estate agent? Does it also provide a chance for somebody to live in Falmouth who might not otherwise be able to live here?
So like I'm talking about a situation really where some lots might be selling for, $250,000 or $300,000.
Okay, a small lot, an
A
already
small lot
subdivided lot. That doesn't
being-
sound like affordable.
Being cut in two, where a couple of homes are being jammed onto those lots.
Okay.
Where you have two homes on a lot, and it suddenly begins to change the character of a neighborhood.
That's right, but you're telling me it changes the character of the neighborhood. We get the bad consequence, and we don't really get the good consequence of affordability because this is Falmouth. Those lots are too expensive anyway.
That's my point of view.
Okay, thanks for
make
helping me with that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Other comments about density? What are our concerns?
Regarding lot size and making it more affordable, I don't think it's a good idea to reduce setbacks and to have it affordable because it's, speaking of capitalism, I think there's supply and demand. And if Falmouth doesn't fit someone's price range, then they'll have to go to Portland or somewhere else.
That's right. It's I'm going to be blunt here, but it's not our job to provide everything that somebody might want.
Mm-hmm.
If you want what we have, come to Falmouth.
Mm-hmm.
You want to preserve what you have. I'm hearing that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fair enough. A hand at the back. Yeah, put one up at the back, and then one up at the front, and then at the back, and I'll just walk back and forth. No, I'm just teasing here. I'm getting my exercise. Yes, sir.
My name's Paul Rudenberg. I've been coming back and forth to Falmouth for about 20 years, just moved here about 4 years ago. I differ with a number of opinions, but I'll try to just keep it with mine. I'm actually a rural veterinarian. I enjoy rural life. I enjoy being around farms, working with farmers, but I like living in a neighborhood, and that involves some density. I agree with the speaker who mentioned that you can have both rural character and somewhat dense neighborhoods. You don't have to have 2-acre or acre lots, and a cul-de-sac that only has 4 houses on it because the lots are so big. That does not make for rural character. Preserving farms, preserving farmlands, things like that makes for rural character. But I want to mention this thing about affordable housing, and so this idea that, well, if you can't afford to live here, it's capitalism. How many service people work in this town? I have no idea, but how many service people work at Ocean View, work at the schools? I'm talking people that are middle income, somewhat lower. How many people that earn $12 an hour work in this town that we benefit from their services? I have people in my family that work for $11, $12, and they could not on their own afford to live in this town. And so where do they go? Well, they have to live farther and farther away. And I think that if you can create a character, you can keep a character of a town, but also make it possible for people that are on the lower incomes that we depend on to live in this town, and make a possibility for them to live in the community as well. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for speaking up. Let me look for someone who hasn't spoken yet, okay? I really appreciate that. If nobody else raises a hand, I'm going to take the microphone back to the gentleman we already heard from. But if there's somebody else who would like to weigh in right now, we want to hear from you. I'll be back. Hold on.
I moved here 4 years ago from right outside of D.C., and we moved here, one, because we wanted to be in Maine, but we also did not want to be in a densely packed neighborhood, which we had lived in for 32 years. And what's happening, if, we can talk about, all of these changes abstractly, but if you look at the houses that are being built since this zoning has changed, I would think that most people would be appalled. You can literally, in some cases, almost reach out the window and touch the house that's next door in a couple of the situations. So I think it's important to talk about this from a theoretical perspective. It's important to deal with the statistics. But when it actually gets down to it, these kinds of changes that we're talking about will really affect our quality of life.
Thanks for speaking up, but I want to ask you a little bit more about that. Here's the simple question. What's wrong with being able to reach out your window and touch the house next door? How does such tightly packed housing affect quality of life?
Well, I think that's an individual question, but from my perspective, it affects it just in terms of having the necessary space to be able to, to live your life with some level of privacy, to be able to have neighbors, but to not have them so that
Outside your window.
exactly, so that they're within arm's reach.
Okay.
So there's a big difference there.
Okay. Impacts privacy is something I heard. Thanks for letting me pull that out of you a little bit. Did you want to speak up, sir? You're good? Okay, if you want to talk later, I want to hear from you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
A lot of people have mentioned, like that gentleman, about the lower incomes or people that, service people that need a housing in this town. One, I guess I'd like to say, the next option isn't 150 miles away. You can go to Windham, Buxton. I mean, we're talking 5 miles down the road. And to say that you can't get into this town, I'm a contractor, I'm a builder. I started in '06. I lived in a small house in South Portland. I built a house in Falmouth in '07, and I built a couple more in this town to grow. I didn't start off with the biggest house. I didn't start off with the nicest house in Falmouth, but I've earned my place in this town. I don't think we owe it to somebody to just, one developer can make $1 million off of his development so that 100 people can get their little house instantly in the town of Falmouth. I earned my place into this town. It can be done. I don't think we need these dense developments just to give affordable housing to masses.
Okay. All right. Thanks for speaking up. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Beth Uminski, and we live at Falmouth Woods Association. I passed out flyers tonight what happened to our whole association. I think it's a sin what the town of Falmouth has done to us. We have a private road. When we moved from Arizona, I said, oh my gosh, John, let's pour our savings into this place. I loved it. 4 acres, beautiful neighbors. And it's surreal. You go in, it's private, it's quiet. Well, all of a sudden, we get a blue postcard that there's a builder who's using my private road that I pay for, and the town approved it. We had to get a lawyer. $20,000 later.
This one.
I could cry. I work hard. I work 60 hours a week. I give my life and soul to my home, my investment, my family. How wonderful it would be for my daughter to come 10 years from now and drive down a serene, private, country road where you have a life that you want to live. And the town of Falmouth did not protect us. They didn't help us. They denied us. We won. But you know what? He took down the trees that he doesn't have enough land to build, and he took down trees on my neighbor's property. And they have not helped us. We have a utility line, an easement that goes through this property that he wants to build on, and he can't. They said they didn't know about it. Our lawyer told them about it.
Right.
We also have an easement, my neighbor who has an easement to use a right-of-way to go to Longwoods Road. This man came to my house and pleaded for me to use my road. Easter Sunday, I said, in the name of God, get out of my property and my house. You've ruined me. He has ruined my life for the last year. And if you could see what he's done to my neighborhood, it hurts. And I think the town of Falmouth, we pay $10,000 a year in taxes. Each one of us, there's 4 of us in this association. And they did not protect us. They came down and told the builder that he could use our road. They never even looked into it. This is a sin. What are they doing to us? I can't believe that I gave my life savings and worked so hard, And now when you go down my driveway, you see a bare lot that he can't build on, but he took all the trees down. Is this what it's coming to?
Right. Is this what we're coming to? Okay. Thanks for speaking up. Thank you. Someone else want to give any kind of opinion, share any thoughts on the topic of density? Thanks for your patience, sir. Let's hear from you again.
Okay, sorry to be a double dipper. On the subject of affordable housing, or to cheapen the housing in the town of Falmouth. That's an abstract idea that has a lot of appeal to it. But there are unintended consequences. That the advocacy for doing that is noble sounding and is indeed noble, but you have to consider the unintended consequences. Something I notice about the town is that there are a great many what I'll call humble homes, that the people who live in them now, and correct me if I'm wrong, the people who live in them now could not possibly afford the houses that they're living in that they acquired some years ago when they could afford them. They have become unaffordable to the people who live in them, except for the fact that they're already there. And they're lucky in the sense that their valuations have increased, and that's their good fortune, and they deserve that. The thing is, if you do something to this town that cheapens the housing, it has world-class schools. What parents anywhere don't want their kids to go to school in Falmouth? It's like a lifeboat situation. There are people drowning all around the lifeboat, but the lifeboat's already full. You have to consider the total situation, unintended consequences. You take on too many people, the lifeboat goes down, and everybody goes down. But I have in mind all those people that live in all parts, many parts of Falmouth, including Falmouth Flats. A lot of those homes were built in the 50s, it would appear. They're small, 1,400 square feet, and maybe no garage, one-car garage, which was popular back then. But they're probably very high priced and not affordable, except the people that live in them. Now, what happens to those people if you raise the taxes because of a huge influx of affordable housing dwellers who swamp the schools, may put it out of reach? Either two things are going to happen. The school will not be able to continue at the standards that it has because it won't be able to afford to, or the taxes will go through the roof, and these people I'm talking about won't be able to stay in Falmouth. And they're here now, and they're your constituency now. They're the people you need to consider, not people who don't live here now, but aspire to and would like to have their kids go to the school.
So let me just...
Noble though the purpose may be, there are unintended, dreadful consequences for the people who live here now.
Okay. Hold on that second. Let me just understand the logic here. So if you're concerned that if you increase the density, it will put pressure on the schools and infrastructure, requiring taxes to be raised, and people won't be able to afford the taxes, and it will push people out who bought into Falmouth at their means, but now taxes are beyond their means and they'll have to leave. Is that essentially what you're saying?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
That's the cycle. That's precisely the cycle that will occur. And the changes made in 2013 incentivize this very thing I'm talking about,
right,
and disregard the unintended consequences. And the town authorities have been blindsided by the effects and by the reaction from the population, and they shouldn't have been.
Right.
I mean, the planning staff in this town should have anticipated what happened and didn't. So
okay. Now you're making a comment on
blindsided by something we shouldn't have been blindsided by.
Okay. Fair enough. Thanks for explaining that. We're going to move to another topic here in a minute. But let's take a couple more questions. Thanks. Teo's going to put back your comments here. Sorry about that. I'm going to keep managing the mics because I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to talk who wants to. And we've got some more tape over here too, Teo, if you want. We even got some duct tape if you want to go all out. Anyone else want to make a comment about density? Share your concern. And we've had some good concerns, and maybe you share those that have already been spoken. But if you have a new spin on it, if there's something new that has not yet been said that you think your town council needs to hear, raise a hand. We want to hear from you.
My name is Shirley Pride. My husband and I, we moved here in 1967, and we were young parents then. Now it's 2018, and we're old parents. And that gentleman was correct. We are very concerned. We want to age in place. And we may not be able to do that.
Right.
With this.
Let me throw another thing that I've heard here. Well, you know, I haven't heard it from one of you, so I'm not going to say it. There's a question that I have, but it needs to come from you, so I'm going to be restrained here. Is there anybody else that either has a question or a comment about density?
Yeah, hi, my name is Valentine Sheldon, and I grew up in Maine, and I lived in New York for 25 years, and I came back with my family 4 years ago. I believe there is a fundamental problem with the decision-making process about density in this town. It seems to me, by going to the town website, that the decisions to change the lot sizes and to have multifamily building structures and two-family structures happened in the span of 3 or 4 months. And there was very little input from the community, us, people who might have been for it, people who might have been against it, and the town just made the decision. And now, what really bugs me about this is that we have to come here and beg for it to change. And there is something fundamentally wrong with that.
Okay. All right. Let's take a little. Thank you. Let's take a little side road here, and if others of you have comments or concerns about the process, let's hear a couple of those. Then we're going to move on. We're going to talk about schools and infrastructure, but I know that this is on your mind. Some of you have things to say about the process that the town has used in the past, the process that we're in right now. Let's have those.
My name's Randy Cooper. I've only lived here since April, and I love the town. Came over from New Hampshire, but what I've been struggling with and thinking about it all day is, and I'm sorry, one who said is how many is too many, is in some respects, and I've looked at a lot of master plans before and that kind of stuff, but I don't know if anyone's ever taken on the fact that, and I'm not sure what the population is, but the optimal population for the town of Falmouth is X. And sure, we're going to have some come in and we're going to have some come out, and maybe we can handle 10 to 15 more people a year or whatever it may be. And sure, we'd like some of, more affordable housing, but I mean, we don't, there's this thing called an environmental impact statement, but I'd really like an economic impact statement and a number of other things. Is what is the consequence of change of density? What is the consequence of building this roadway better? What is, we don't, because you're going to, I know because I was in the business of it, it's really dollars that drive everything. And so you have a piece of land and it's worth X at a density of 2. It's worth double X at a density of 6. It's, if setbacks are less, all of these things that allow growth to continue or to be better makes more dollars. And on the other side of it is the property owner. I mean, I now own a big piece of property, which I've kept in my family for the last 100 years. And now you're going to say I no longer can do anything with it because you've gotten too big. So that's not fair either. So I'm just saying when we think of where we're going in the future is maybe we have to start almost from the top down of
what's the optimal,
what can we handle? I mean,
right.
The school system, what can we handle? I mean, look at this, us up on Route 100, never going to get sewer and water, okay? And everyone else, but we're paying for it. You know? Yeah, so it's, yeah.
Okay.
Well, how do we, where we're going?
Right.
Where are we going?
Right,
And I
right.
don't think any of these changes ever took that into
Right,
place.
right. And once you have that, then you can do an assessment of how a particular ordinance or zoning change would affect that. Yeah. And you mentioned economic impact analysis. Yeah, yeah. Any other comments about the process? What you think the process should be like going forward? If you have concerns about the process in the past, I got two hands of people here that have already spoken. I'm going to let them talk if nobody else wants to speak. It's a new subject, that's right, but we also want to hear from new people. Is there anybody who hasn't yet spoken that would like to make a comment about the process? We heard your hand already. Let's go to you, sir. I'm going to get there. We'll get. I'm really trying to make room though for new voices. Let's hear what you have to say.
Two major points on the process. One is the CDC, all right, the Community Development Committee. If you follow them along, the agendas are very, very vague to begin with. There are no minutes to, basically, they're kept up to date. There is no public input or dialogue involved at a CDC meeting. So if you go to a CDC meeting, you're not able to speak, so there's no public input. Okay, this is made up of 3 members of the council. These 3 people come back with town staff to the full council, and then there's a 3-meeting process to get, things approved. The other major item I see, which is flawed, and I'm glad to see that the developers on Route 1 on the sports complex had a public meeting on that. There's 2 easily accessible to developers are too easily accessible to the town manager, town staff, long-range planning, and all that, and the ball already gets rolling way down the path before the public is even made aware of anything. And they're not kept up on information.
Some concerns about the CDC process and concerns that developers have too much advance influence on town staff. Did you want to say something else?
I'd just like to say the town did take about 3 years to make some of these decisions, and I totally was surprised at some of them. But I like to also say, being here 35 years, where was everybody when Ocean View went into place? I live across the street from the largest retirement community where there's houses upon houses and stacked high everywhere, and nobody in this room, hardly I can remember ever being there against it. And that destroyed my neighborhood. So what I say, density, I think needs to be done. People like maybe have an acre or 2 and they want to sell off a piece of land after a while. I think when they reduce some of the setbacks, that was great for them people. But to look at a development that was out of control and nobody was against it because they weren't putting kids into the school system, that was the only excuse I got. But and yet it destroyed my neighborhood. They tore down houses actually to build this place. That was okay. Because you know why? It wasn't in none of your neighborhoods. So nobody cared. But now it's in your neighborhood, everybody cares. But that's just the way it goes here. I have to look at that every day. When the power goes out, all I hear is generators going on for about a mile. It's 100 acres over there, and 80-something of them have been built on. And when they can't build on them on one level, they've been building high-rise, and they continue to go. And I've asked the same question. How much more? But like I say, now that everybody's getting a little bit in their neighborhood, now nobody wants to. I think we all have to think about it and look at this in a real way and keep the rural areas rural, but residential A needs to grow a little bit. That's just my thought.
All right. All right, thanks for speaking up. Anybody else? Don't want to take too much time on this. It's not our primary focus. There's a lot of other stuff on the wall. But if anybody else feels very strongly that you need to make a comment about the process by which the town is making decisions now or going to make decisions in the future or has made decisions, now's your chance. Anybody else?
I know I spoke already, but I have one more thing to say.
Okay, let me just see if there's anybody else who wants to speak about this. Anybody else on the process? We do have a couple other hands. I don't see a hand over there, sir.
No, it's not me. I got a gentleman at this table. I haven't seen that earlier.
Okay, well, if I see a hand, I'll go over there.
I feel that the changes that were made were not widely announced to the residents of the particular zones that had these major changes.
Okay.
And in our incidents, there's a subdivision of a very small lot, and 2 houses are now on that lot, and they're sort of inappropriate for the neighborhood as it stands. But I was totally unaware of
You didn't get notice. Okay, thanks for raising that. Yeah. I'm going to go to this person over here that we haven't heard from yet. Thanks for your patience. Yes, sir.
Thanks, Greg. My name's Andy Meyer. I just want to make a quick comment. When you talk about process, I wanted to express my gratitude to Nathan and Teo and the whole staff to be here to hear us out tonight. I didn't come with a mission. I just fascinated in the process, and I'm really grateful that they've given everyone an opportunity to comment. So I appreciate that.
There's a comment on the process. Thank you. We're going to take a comment from you, sir, a quick comment from Beth, and then we're going to move on, and we'll talk about another one of these topics.
Well, having come from a town meeting state where basically everyone's town meetings, in that state, zoning only gets adopted at town meeting where everyone has a vote. And one of the things difficult in this process is you have a town council that has the zoning authority. So, and I think what I hear now is some of the problems is, and I'm not saying the town council did anything wrong, is that how do they get the input beforehand and appropriately and long enough to whether they really are reflecting what the community wants and not just what the interest groups want. Okay?
Okay.
And
Yep, that makes perfect sense. That the townspeople should have just as much, actually more influence than the interest groups. Yes, last comment.
So one thing that took us by surprise was when we bought the house, they told us that it was farm and forest. And in 2016, we had no idea that it got rezoned. So that's another thing that took us by surprise. And I just wanted to know, is it possible to get that back to farm and forest?
Okay. All right, thanks for going on this little side road with me about the process. I knew that there were some among you who had some strong opinions. I could kind of feel it creeping up, so that's why we took the side road. I'm going to propose we go to a different place. Let's talk about some of the comments at this end of the wall for a few minutes. I characterize them as pedestrian-friendly and neighborhood character. I'm going to read some of these, and then I would like to hear more in-depth comments about some of these issues. First of all, in terms of neighborhood character, enforce site standards, changing our neighborhood, thankful for zoning changes. Changes in zoning will drastically impact the quality of life. No town notice given when postage stamp houses are built in my neighborhood. Mike, you're helping me out here, right? Thank you. That's about the process. I'll try to remember to move that one when I have some free hands. Appreciate new neighbors. Increase setbacks, no sidewalks or tiny houses. Adverse impact of development on existing neighborhoods. Sidewalks, pedestrian friendly, loss of Falmouth character. So, well, let me keep going here because these aren't organized in the best way. There's a lot of spillover here. This one says loss of semi-rural character. The character of Falmouth be kept as it is. Our neighborhood got better when zoning changed. Keep the character of the town. Do not allow high-density development. Need more sidewalks in neighborhood parks. We are losing Falmouth charm. Increase setbacks and minimum lot sizes. I think there are some differing opinions on this wall. And I would like to hear both sides or all sides. If there is somebody that made a comment in this part of the wall and you would like to explain your comment, I want to hear more from you. Anybody want to go a little deeper on this topic of neighborhood character, pedestrian friendly? Let's hear from you.
I live on Middle Road, kind of down by the river. And since 2014, there have been 3 new houses kind of crammed in on small lots within 200 yards in my house. And in the 22 years that I've been there have been 2 additional ones also kind of popping up or somewhat crammed in as well. So to me, it feels more like Portland now than it does kind of a rural-ish feeling that it had 22 years ago.
Yeah, the character has changed because of the infill. Yeah. Anyone else? So some of these signs up here talk about being grateful for the zoning changes, thankful for the zoning. Our neighbors got better when zoning changed. I'd love to hear more about that. How have the zoning changes made things better for some people? Is anybody willing to speak to that? It might be a minority opinion in this crowd, and I can understand why you might be hesitant to speak up, and that's fine. We're not going to put anybody on the spot. But if you have the courage, it would be helpful to understand the positive aspects of some of these changes. And if nobody on that side of the ledger wants to speak up, somebody tell me more about the negative aspects. Or in particular, there's a number of comments up there about increasing the setbacks as a particular type of zoning change. Does somebody want to speak to that and why you think that either increasing or decreasing setbacks is a good idea? Okay, I'm going to go over here. We might get there. Yep. Be patient. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's Robert Rouse. I'll speak to the sidewalks issue because I had a couple comments up there about that. My objections to what is known as the village center seems to me it looks like the mall area in South Portland, and I think the attraction of big box stores. Someone else had comments up there about walkable character and so forth. We need to be careful what we build in the village center so that it is walkable. Even if you put sidewalks along Route 1, it's rare that I drive down Route 1 and see anybody walking on those sidewalks, and it's partly because there are no neighborhoods connected to those sidewalks. I think it'd be pretty efficient for the town to look at where sidewalks could be built that link large groups of people to commercial areas, and then make sure that the commercial areas have destinations that we would walk to. And for an example, I don't think I would walk to Walmart or walk to the grocery store or walk to a car dealer. Those are not places I would go. I would walk to a restaurant. I would walk to a coffee shop, a sandwich shop, barber shop, whatever. Those are things. So I think it's important to think about what we're building in that village center and then connect the village center with sidewalks to high density. I don't mean high density. I mean areas where lots of people live. Yeah. So.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Thanks for making that comment about sidewalks and pedestrian flow. Yes, sir.
I'd like to point out on Route 9, they reduced where the woman said they changed it from farm and forest. And on Route 9, which is a major route, they have changed the setback to 15 feet off the right-of-way of Route 9. And anyone that lives along the Gray Road trying to get that road reconstructed, they had a horrendous time of finding space enough to widen that road. And it's just going to haunt the state and the town down the road by reducing those setbacks to 15 feet from the right-of-way line. And there was a new house, I had me work on the house next door, that just is in the process of being built. And I couldn't believe how close that house is being built to Route 9. So that's just, the town creating more mistakes down the road.
All right, thanks so much. And just put plenty of tape right up there. Don't be bashful.
Can we do karaoke?
About that. And we'll try to get some of these signs back up on the wall. Thank you. That's really helpful. And if we can put any of these signs back, that'd be great. Maybe I would have to do that so I know where they go. I want to understand about setbacks, though. Because setbacks, that's how we do it. Yes, sir.
The road. So I went back online to see what the setbacks were over there.
That's-
15 feet. And I noticed
That's right. This is what happens when we do things without efficient infrastructure. Right. Schools fell down. But we put it back up, people. All right, well, look, if there's any more comments about setbacks, sidewalks, neighborhood character, especially from people we haven't heard from yet, I want to hear them. Yes, sir. Well, that's okay. I don't see any other hands up, so.
Hey, are the mics here?
Oh, I left stranded. That's a dangerous thing to do.
So I've heard Falmouth Road mentioned and Middle Road, and it is true that Falmouth Road is beautiful, and there's the trees and the houses, different houses all apart, but it's not safe to walk on Falmouth Road. We live a couple miles from the schools, and I cringed every time I thought of my kids biking to the school. I walked here from Pleasant Hill, and it's not safe. It was not safe to walk down Middle Road. So some of the, feeling of a nice character, rural character and all that is a place where people can walk around. I agree I lived for 3 months in the Falmouth Inn because I couldn't find a place to live in Falmouth. And I have family here, so we wanted to be in the area. But there's other places where, to make community life better, we sorely need places that are safe to walk around, bike around, that sort of thing. I think actually people in Falmouth love to be outdoors, bike, be out with their dogs and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of places, like you say, between neighborhoods where it just really isn't safe. And I think that would improve the beauty and the character if we had, say, a place to get out, be walking around. Yeah.
Okay, thanks for saying that. Let's try a different topic. Oh yes, I saw your hand, ma'am. Let's hear from you. I'm going to go next to schools, property taxes, that kind of thing. But let's hear more.
Well, I will say something about the sidewalks.
Let's hear it.
I live just off of Route 1 between Martins Point Bridge and the shopping center. And so
Can you hold it a little closer?
Pardon?
Hold the mic a little closer.
A little closer. Between Martins Point Bridge and the shopping center, and the traffic has changed by having 2 lanes instead of 4 on that part of Route 1, and they put medians in and sidewalks. And I have noticed more use. There are many more people out there. It's slow, but people are getting more used to it. They're using the bus. I see people standing at the bus stops. And they're using that corridor anyway, because the traffic now is slower, and there's enough room, between the cars and the sidewalk.
What do you mean by using the corridor? People walking, going into the shops?
Walking, biking.
Okay.
I've seen baby carriages.
Okay, not in cars. What you don't mean more people have been using it by driving through.
Oh, well, I don't know about that
yeah,
part.
but you're saying the pedestrian traffic.
Sometimes it's hard to get out on the road.
Right.
And so, yes, there's more traffic, but it's changed now, and we have a sidewalk. We didn't have much of a sidewalk before.
Right. Okay.
And it is getting used more slowly.
Right. I get it. You're telling us that change has had a positive impact on pedestrian activity. Let me read some of these pieces of paper up here, because I know this is another hot topic for you, and it's kind of an interesting coincidence that they were put side by side on the wall. We didn't plan that, but we got taxes and property values right next to schools. We know that increased pressure on the schools can result in increased taxes, and that's a concern for many of you. So let me just read some of these, starting with schools. Schools are already at capacity. School capacity, protect schools. Falmouth Schools' ability to handle growth. Nowhere in the zoning documents created since 2013 was any priority given to the effects of the changes on the tax rate and school capacity. Our schools, ! Too many schools. Overcrowded schools. Schools are crowded now. Schools, school overcrowding. Population growth versus school capacity. Is there a mathematical model that explains the expense to the town of each new resident? The point is that there is an expense to the town of each new resident, this person thinks, and imagines that there might even be a mathematical model. Schools are crowded. Can the school system handle the increase in population? Do residential zoning amendments have desired results? I'm going to put this over here in the process department. Those are the things that you've said about schools. I'm going to keep going, okay? I want to hear your comments on schools, but let me just read a bunch of these also. We've really got three categories here. We've got taxes, tax increase, impact fees, pay as you go, age in place, taxes too high. Is there infrastructure to support the dense residential development? Strained emergency services, tax increase, and then we have some things about property values. Property values will go down. Property values going down, not protecting homeowner, taxpayers, property. Property values going down, property values preserved, property values appreciate the increase in my property values, property value decline. Three topics here. A potential impact on property values, potential impact on taxes, potential impact on schools. Who would like to say more about any of these three topics?
Yeah, it's my understanding that the school system is at or near its capacity. The high school is very close to its capacity, and I have my younger daughter is in kindergarten, and they added a new class because there are more people in town, and we had conferences last week, and we talked about, well, what happens when there are more kids, and well, there's actually no space.
So, zoning changes that incentivize increased density are going to result in more school-aged children, which are going to result in, following the logic here.
There's nowhere to put them.
There's nowhere to put them. So
I don't think after creating the Taj Mahal of school systems that we're going to want to have trailers surrounding it.
Okay, so you have to increase taxes to pay for that. But taxes can be increased in one of two ways, right? Either increase the tax rate, or the total property tax base goes up in value. There's a higher taxable base. So presumably, if you had more people moving to town, wouldn't that increase the property tax base? And that's how it's supposed to work in theory, right? But help me out here. Okay, a lot of you are saying no. I know, I'm being provocative on purpose.
Right, but what my understanding is that this state, and this is after talking to people who do this for a living, the state of Maine is one of the only states that towns do not require developers to pay a fee based on their increase of population that they're creating. So in many other states, Florida, for example, when a developer comes in, there's a plan, X amount of new homes. The developer has to pay that town for the extra emergency services that will be required, for the extra teachers, for the extra administrators in the school. There is nothing like that here, because there is no, from what I understand, and I've only lived here for 4 years, but where's the planning, like instead of the theory, like, oh, this is how it's supposed to work.
Right.
Why doesn't the town hire some people to actually figure out, well, what's it going to cost?
Right. And then how's that going to get
and who's going to pay for it?
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks for starting us off in this conversation. Let's talk about this. Tell me more about your concerns of impact on property taxes, what increased density would do to property values, and what the impacts on the schools could be. I figured out that you're going to have something to say pretty much on every topic, and this guy's going to raise his hand any minute probably. But let's hear from you, sir.
Well, the problem with your observation that it should balance if you put the stress on low-cost housing, you're going to get less money per pupil coming into the system. So
Right. Right. The
doesn't
property
work.
tax base does not raise at the same at a fast enough rate to
Right.
pay their way.
Right.
That's the problem. Let's hand her the microphone. I'd like to
You
hear.
have to also build extensions of new schools.
Right.
And that is a completely different
Right.
financial problem.
Right. Now you have to probably borrow money, and now you're paying interest on the
Another
bonds.
bond.
Right. Another bond. Right. Right. Okay. Thanks for speaking up. Other comments, especially if there's somebody who hasn't spoken up in this meeting and you want to share your thoughts. You know, we're on the topic of taxes, schools, and property values. Anyone? I'll even have a seat right here.
Yeah, I just want to make everyone aware what the actual student impact is for property taxes. I get information here from the Cumberland School District, but every student in the school district is an impact to your property taxes of $11,000 a year. So if you have houses that are only generating $4,000 a year and they have 2 children in the school system, it's never even going to be break even in 2 lifetimes of people living there. This is where the equation has run awry. It used to be people used to move to Falmouth or were raised in Falmouth, raised their family here, lived here to, the people that want to, like myself, want to basically live at home till I can't move again. And that no longer happens. What we have is basically warehousing for people coming here, using the facilities, using the schools, and as soon as their oldest is in senior, there's a for sale sign going up, and that whole cycle starts right over again. There's never a respite for that home to generate some taxes that's going to offset for the next family. And that's what I see. It happens all the time.
All right. Okay. Anyone else? Nice job.
Hi, I have 4 children in the Falmouth schools. I have 1 in the elementary school, 1 in the middle school, and 2 in the high school. So I think that I can speak to the fact that our schools are already overcrowded. Our high school students cannot all fit in the cafeteria at the same time. They cannot fit in the theater all at the same time. And a lot of them are in very crowded, very crammed classes and classrooms, and we simply cannot accommodate a huge influx of students right now.
Okay. So we're making the case that as a town, we should not have policies. This is a little bit of a blunt statement, but many of you, I think, are saying we should not have policies that attract families because it would burden the schools. Am I right about that? It sounds a little harsh and blunt, but somebody add some nuance here.
I disagree with that statement. I don't think that that's what people are saying, and I don't think people are saying that they don't want some density in this town. I don't think it's black and white. I don't think it's a line in the sand. They're saying that I believe, and people are more than willing to correct me if I'm wrong, in that a zoning policy was put in effect 3 years ago that very little people didn't know a lot about it. It was done very quickly. It was done with not a lot of public input, and it's hurt. It's hurt the town, and it's hurt a lot of people. I don't think people are saying we don't want people moving into the town. I don't think that we're saying that we don't necessarily want lower income people moving into the town. We just have to be smart about it. And you have to get some public, and this is the first time I've seen a forum of this type, and I am pleased that you are allowing people to speak tonight. I didn't think that was going to happen when I looked at the agenda. But I don't think that the statement that you just made is correct at all.
Great. Well, that's why I made it, to see what you all thought. But so let me ask this: if not these zoning ordinances, and if you really do want to attract low-income people to Falmouth and families to Falmouth, people with children, what are your ideas for doing that? If you're not going to, as a town, attract low-income people and children to Falmouth through these density incentives, how will you do it? Does anybody have another idea? Or maybe it is that actually we're okay without more low-income people and more families. Do you see what I'm pushing on here? Let me see if there's somebody who hasn't spoken yet. Okay, thank you. Hold on.
It seems like if you're going to say there should be some growth, then you could just decide where the density is going to take place. And maybe that would solve some of these problems.
Okay, all right. Be very deliberate about where the density will be. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Randy Harding, and I live on Brook Road. One of the things we don't hear a lot from the town council is looking at solving some of the large-scale traffic problems. So it's not always a density issue. People have the right to buy land and build a house. But if we take, for example, where I live, it's 6 miles to Portland if I take Washington Avenue, or it's 9 miles if I drive through Falmouth on Falmouth Road all the way over to 495 South. But I'll still drive all the way through Falmouth, and I know a lot of other people do the same thing because I'm a slow driver, and they tailgate me the whole way.
Everybody know this guy?
But we have a lot of options in Falmouth. We have the Turnpike Spur going right through Falmouth, and we could make. I wish the town of Falmouth would do some long-scale traffic studies to see what we could do to solve this. And so it's not necessarily trying to keep people from building. It's just that Falmouth Road is very dangerous. Right. And
right. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Thanks for speaking up. I'm always looking for new hands. Is there somebody that wants to speak to my provocative prompt? I was still on schools, taxes, property values.
I don't think Falmouth was not growing before these changes were made. There was a building that was going on. There were subdivisions going on. People who had an acre, 2 acres, could break them up into 0.46, because I live in RA. What this proposal does, it supercharges it. Okay. This is like growth on steroids, right. And it's uncontrolled.
Okay.
And I think that to me is the problem. I am not against growth. Growth is going to happen, but it needs to happen sustainably and in a manner that the town can actually keep up the pace with.
Right. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Anyone else? Let's hear a brief comment from you. Then we're going to actually, before you comment, sir, let me just take stock of where we've talked a lot about a lot of these topics. We've not yet talked about affordable housing, traffic, or open and rural space, or Falmouth Center in particular. So let's take your comment, and then let's see if we can knock off these last 3 even before 9 o'clock this evening. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, very, very quickly, because it's already been said in different ways, but to really hit the nail on the head, in 2013, that's the watershed moment.
Yeah.
You've heard about the schools being up to capacity. At that juncture, the town's authorities should have been focused on what the heck do we do in light of those circumstances to make sure that we manage the growth that will occur inevitably, that we can't prevent anyway, because it is, after all, free enterprise and so on. Instead, remarkably and stunningly, they went the other way, as pointed out by the previous gentleman. Mm-hmm. They put growth on steroids, like growth is a wonderful thing and we need to embrace it, and everybody will be better off for it.
Okay.
Where did that come from?
Right.
I can't believe that came from the population here.
Right.
It came from some ideology, maybe from
Right.
planning ideology
Yeah.
or something.
Or maybe, as some have said, it was simply unintended. I don't know. I'm not trying to be defensive or speak for them. I just don't know. Where the heck did that come from? We don't know. Let's take up one of these other topics. I guess I'm just going to go across the wall here. Rural and open space. Some of you had some things to say about this. I'm going to read some of these pieces of paper, and I'm going to ask anybody who wants to comment on any of these to raise a hand. How to preserve open field/farmland, creating recreational space, more waterfront access, preserving open space. Cluster septic systems are a bad idea and they should be banned in Falmouth. Too much development leads to too much loss of natural areas and wildlife habitat. High-density housing will be occupied by people who inherently do not give a hoot about rural character. They will change the town. There is too much suburban sprawl, loss of environmental habitat and in fragmented spaces, losing rural character, carbon footprint, loss of habitat and environment. Take the beauty of our Falmouth Woods Association away. I kind of think I know where that one came from. But tell me, do you think that the town should have policies that deliberately preserve open space and preserve the rural character? And if so, what do these particular amendments that you're concerned about, what is their effect on that? I'm looking to go deeper here on the topic of open space and rural character. Any comments? I love seeing new hands. Coming up next, traffic.
I guess I very much appreciate the beautiful open spaces within the town of Falmouth and driving around and looking at the farmland, the white fences, the horses and cattle in the yard. And I think it's very important that that stays. But I think that that people have different ideas in terms of what density is. And some people feel that taking that land and breaking it up into 2-acre lots is preserving some sort of rural atmosphere. And I object to that. I feel that that's a real misuse of land. And what do people do with 2 acres, mostly other than mow it? And I would prefer to see a more villagey type and preserve the land, the farmlands and the open fields, protect them somehow.
So we almost had some claps there for you. I'm not sure if I heard some, but
one.
Okay, one clap for you. You said you'd like to see things more villagey. So does that mean that, do you think that increasing density in some parts of town is a way to preserve rural character in other parts of town?
Well, I'm new in town, but I've lived rurally in New Hampshire in a town of 400 people, so I'm not new to this. I'm not quite sure when people are talking about density, if you're talking about 2 houses on a half-acre lot. That to me could be a little uncomfortable.
Right.
But I think there's a comfort level in neighborhoods that I see here where houses are built with enough elbow room, or people are comfortable and they seem to have a connection with their neighbors. And I think it's too bad when we don't have a connection with our neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who it was who spoke for sidewalks, but I think that is one thing that sidewalks do accomplish,
Right.
is that people walk to each other's homes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks for speaking up. Thank you. I'm looking for hands. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Amanda Rand, and I've lived in Falmouth for virtually my entire life, except for being away for a few years during school. I have 3 children in the school system now. I think a lot of people, or I'm guessing a lot of people in talking about preserving the rural character, they are thinking partly of the farmlands and the beautiful pastures that are out in West Falmouth. And I agree, they are beautiful, and I'm in favor of protecting that to some extent. I worry a little bit, though, that there's kind of a mentality of, well, we'll sacrifice the east side of Falmouth or the Route 1 corridor or Route 88 or the flats. We'll sort of sacrifice that and grow the heck out of it as long as we're preserving this area over here. And to my mind, I guess I'd like to look at the town more holistically and think of the character of the entire town. I'm not saying we're going to turn, the east side of town into farmland, but I think we have to be concerned about the character of the entire place and how the density of both residential and commercial development happening too fast, too quickly, and being jammed in can affect the entire place.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about traffic for a moment here. Wanting to give you a chance to talk on all the different topics tonight. Some of your concerns about traffic pressures, traffic on the roads to and from the schools, too much traffic and concerns with speeding, traffic, development equals traffic implications, congestion, too much traffic, growth in dense areas will cause traffic. I'm concerned about traffic congestion. Okay, I think I get that one. You're concerned that, this one says it in a nice summary kind of way, growth in dense areas will cause traffic problems. Anybody want to elaborate on any of these issues? This is a big concern that you have about increased density. My watch says we got about 14 minutes in this meeting. We have not yet talked about affordable housing. Let's touch base with this one. We need affordable housing. Elders, new Mainers, and service providers can't afford to live here. What about affordable housing? Affordable housing stock is needed, affordable. So is somebody willing to speak about this a little bit more? How do these zoning amendments that you're most concerned about affect affordable housing? How does increased density have a positive or negative effect on affordable housing? Anybody want to say anything about housing? And just about the affordability of Falmouth in general?
I think Falmouth's got affordable housing now. I mean, affordable housing to me is not a brand new house on 2-car garage on 2 acres of land. There's plenty of houses around. I know this young man right here is just coming up in life, and he's coming out and he's finding plenty of houses to buy and that are affordable for him. And there's plenty around here, I believe. There's also rental units for people that want to come here. I mean, it's not like we don't have affordable housing in this town.
Okay, it's here. It's here already to an adequate degree. Any other comments on affordability? Would anybody like to make a comment on anything? I asked you this question. I'll show it to you again. What's on your mind regarding residential development in Falmouth? If there is something that you would like members of the LPAC or members of the town council to hear that has not yet been spoken tonight, or if you would like to say it in your own special way, and we haven't yet heard from you, we want to hear. This is the chance for last comments on any topic. Hold on just a second.
It came up when the gentleman talked about going from West Falmouth to East Falmouth to get to Portland. And I just know this much. For a town that has a bypass in it that goes from one side to the other, why couldn't we ever be able to get a pass to be able to use it? It's stupid, we have, huh?
All right. Yes, sir.
There's been a lot of questions tonight on how and why the 2013 zoning change came about with the LPAC back then. Is there anybody here tonight that could speak to that from either the town council or the original LPAC? I'd like to hear their comments on why the concept of that took place back in 2013.
Well, I'm going to imagine that there are different interpretations of that. That even, no one person could probably give the definitive truth. But if somebody wants to,
Maybe multiple opinions.
well, I'm nervous about the time and sliding into a new conversation and sliding into a conversation which looks backwards instead of looks forward. If you want to speak to this, Counselor, I'd be happy to hand you the microphone. But on the other hand, I think it would be acceptable to keep the conversation looking forward, and I encourage you or anybody else to write to council members or write to Teo with that question. Do you feel like you need to respond, or?
I don't have to.
No.
I think that it's helpful.
Well, if you're going to talk, let's give you a microphone.
First of all, I totally appreciate everybody coming out and responding to this request for public input. It's really important, and it's always interesting when we have what turn out oftentimes for expediency, but sort of one-way conversations. I mean, the public have experienced it, the council has experienced it. And I think it is helpful to know background and how this came to be, and that it wasn't a speedy process. I won't go into a long historic story, but councilors and LPAC, we worked how many years on the comp plan? We started in '09. I think it was finally approved in 2013, and our efforts to move towards the vision that was expressed and agreed to by anyone who engaged in the comp plan, our efforts in the subsequent years were to fulfill that vision, to make a livable town, to make a town with diverse housing options. Through the 80s and 90s, we had experienced a lot of suburban sprawl, single-family housing, no options, really, to put anything else in. There were oddly rules on the books, but they weren't usable, to make whatever apartments, that kind of thing. So really, LPAC, your council, your public, we understood that we needed more diverse housing options outside of the single-family dwelling, and indeed, that's what we work towards. Accessory dwellings, 2 families, apartments if need be, and single-family dwellings.
Okay. All right. Thanks for giving us a synopsis of at least how it looked from your perspective. I'm going to give a quick, at some risk, but I'll try to give a quick summary and some highlights. And I also want to put some addresses on the screen for you. If you want to make more comments, or if you want to ask a question, this is Teo Holtvik's email address. Teo, I imagine a lot of people in the room know you, but would you mind just standing and saying hello? Teo, and he works for the town of Falmouth, and he would be happy to take your comments and questions at that email address. If you would like to make a comment about this forum, I have provided a little form that lets you do an evaluation. Were your objectives met? What did you like about the forum? What didn't you like about the forum? Very simple. Your comments will be anonymous, and they will all be provided to the town council and the town staff afterwards. Write this down. I'm sorry, it's a lot of letters and numbers and stuff, but if you would like to make a comment about the forum, you can do that there. If you'd like to make a comment about growth or density, you can write to Teo. There are concerns about the process. I'm doing a little summary here. And I'm not checking my Facebook page. I'm turning on my recorder. You have concerns about the process, both the past and going forward. You wish that the public was better informed of changes being made, that public opinion was better considered in making decisions about what's going forward, and that there was a more detailed impact analysis of the likely consequences of changes being considered. You have right here a lot of what you love. It's here already. There's a lot of love for this town that we've heard in the meeting tonight. Many of you are content with Falmouth the way it is, or the way it has been in recent years. And if the town is going to change, at least let it change slowly and incrementally and thoughtfully. For many of you in this room, these changes that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years have simply been too fast. There is concern about the changing character of the town. Again, many of you like it just the way it is, and you don't really understand or see the need to have deliberate town policies to change the character of the population or change the character of the way it looks. That having been said, that is not a universal opinion held by everyone in this room. Many of you would like the character changed in some ways. You would like more pedestrian activity and more sidewalks connecting residential areas to commercial areas. You would like improved traffic congestion. I mean, there are things that many of you have spoken up about changing. There's been concern about large-scale development. If you're a developer in the room tonight, you've heard a lot of stuff against developers, and I'm just naming that, and naming that I think by and large people are more okay with, you know, a small subdivision than a large-scale development. Again, it's the pace of change. It's not that you're concerned with change, you know, just universally. It's large-scale change, especially that profit developers. I'm being a little bit blunt, but I'm trying to summarize what I've heard. I've probably said enough. I'm going to invite the town council chair up to say a few words and close the meeting. But first I want to thank you all. This has been a really very good conversation, very, very civil. I appreciate you being with me on this, following my directions, and helping us have this conversation. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Craig. Thank you again. It's been some very useful discussion, very heartfelt and constructive suggestions, sharing your feelings about life in Falmouth. I'm your neighbor. We're council and LPAC are volunteers and are very interested in the same things that you're interested in. We do have a chance here to sort of address your interests, your needs, some of the unintended consequences. I've seen them. I totally understand. Next steps, we are going to, Craig is going to generate a report, a summary on this, our discussions this evening. Those will be made available. The Long Range Planning Advisory Committee will be working on assessing some of the data that is available on development and changes that we're seeing in Falmouth, and we'll make a report to the council and to the community. And we will have an opportunity to meet again in a similar forum in the beginning of 2019, we expect, to address the results and to get additional feedback, and perhaps we will have some suggestions on changes or different emphases on our planning and the future of Falmouth. Thank you again this evening for coming, and we really, really appreciate it. Good night.